Excellent. Well, thank you for having me. I feel a bit of a pressure coming into such an environment. I think it's probably the first time I've actually spoken to some of my former peers as a member of Parliament. So I do just want to thank you. It is a huge honour because research is something that is very close to my heart. And as the introduction has alluded to, the University of Otago, is very, very close to my heart. I have to be very careful what I say because of those of you that know Christchurch and know the Ireland electorate, you'll know that the University of Canterbury forms one of the biggest employers in my electorate. So I have to play both sides, but University of Otago is actually really important, and I think as has been alluded to, I have spent a lot of time there. Before I get started, I do just want to acknowledge a few people in the audience. Associate Professor McGregor, thank you very much for having us. And do we have Professor Levac here? No, okay, that's fine. There's some other people in the audience that I'd also like to acknowledge. They're looking around a little bit nervously now. I do just want to acknowledge Professor Logan Walker. Logan, of course, is based in Christchurch, and back in about 2004, I think, I did a summer studentship with Logan, and we found a genetic mutation in a Christchurch family with a predisposition to leukemia. So I actually blame Logan for me becoming a scientist in the first place, but I don't hold that against you. Also, a previous colleague of mine, Louise Bicknell, she's busy telling people that I demonstrated her in our undergraduate genetics lab. What she fails to actually acknowledge to people is actually she started her PhD a year after me in the pathology department down in Dunedin. She's trying to portray me as some sort of old fogey. Mark Hampton on the airport last night in Christchurch goes, "I'm looking for something inspirational from you tomorrow." Hate to disappoint you so early in the afternoon, but anyway, it has been great, and I think science has formed a big part of my career to date. As I've alluded to, it started off down Dunedin when I was one of the first students to go through the genetics program when it was first formed, then went on to do a PhD in P53 and adenoviruses. And it's great to actually be in an audience where actually you can say P53 and people know what I'm actually talking about. And actually the son of my PhD supervisor sitting smack bang, Tom is probably hiding right about now. But it was a great education I received at the University of Otago. I then went to a place called the Children's Medical Research Institute in Sydney, which is associated with the University of Sydney, where I worked on P53 isoforms, and then moved more kind of into the autoimmune space and how P53 might regulate the immune system, and then ended up the Deputy Head of Research for MS Australia, where I oversaw some of our research projects, things like a vitamin D clinical trial to see if we could delay the onset of MS, but also oversaw the granting program that MS Australia carried out. And as we're all probably very well aware of what granting programs like, it's always very interesting when you get your reviews back. And I think the one comment that has stuck with me all through my career was when one reviewer, it's always probably about reviewer number 3, asked how did I know that the HeLa cells that I was using in a colony forming assay wouldn't turn cancerous during the experiment? And for those of you that know cell biology, HeLa cells are well and truly cancerous even before we start. So it has been an interesting transition into politics. I've changed from a 3-year granting cycle to a 3-year election cycle. And it was interesting to hear the previous panel suggesting we should have a longer funding cycle. I think this probably calls for a longer electorate cycle, but I'll leave that up to the good people of New Zealand to decide whether we want that or not. There's been a lot going on in the scientific space, and I think there is a lot going into the future. And first of all, I do just want to acknowledge the upheavals that are probably going to happen in the scientific sector as the scientific reforms do go through. I appreciate, while a lot of you in this room are in the university system, there is kind of major changes coming as we move from 7 Crown Research Institutes to 4 public research organisations, and I appreciate that does cause a lot of tension and a lot of stress as people are going forward, and so I just did want to acknowledge that. Because we are focused on getting efficiencies and going for economic growth, as it was already mentioned in the previous session, and it is important that we can actually get the best bang for our buck. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We are in a tough financial situation. I think we have $175 billion debt as a country, so we do need to make sure we invest wisely. Our debt repayments is actually more than what we spend on primary and secondary education combined, and still there's some. So we do need to make sure that we're actually kind of making it as efficient as possible. And of course, when we look at the government's investment in research and development, it's about $1.5 billion, and that's been fairly static. And when we take the effects of inflation on that, of course, it does lead to some tough times. And what we have seen in the public and the private sector, however, we've seen a huge increase from about $2 billion to $4 billion being invested. And I just want to talk about some of that and some of the things the impact that has had on New Zealand. And of course, there's probably some examples that get rolled out a lot of the time. Rocket Lab, of course, is a prime example that we hear about all the time. And I think that now our advanced aerospace industry is now worth more than our wine industry. And I see Sarah over there. That's correct? Yes, excellent. I've been trying to convince Sarah to send P-53 up into space, unsuccessfully so far. So if touche. But it's not all rockets and rainbows. Of course, we've had plenty of other examples, and I apologise if these are kind of Christchurch centric, but we had Sequent, which is the subterranean 3D mapping company that sold for $1 billion about 4 years ago. When we trace back the origins of that was actually fundamental research carried out by a mathematics lecturer at the University of Canterbury. So we actually have lots of these examples which we can use. Last week, I was talking to a company which has developed technology which allows the Internet of Things to happen on satellites. Now, I thought that was already a thing, but actually it is a lot more challenging than actually it first appears to. And once again, that is some simple basic research that has led to some of these things. That company is now a world leader in that space and is going to Canada to try and sell it. So we're good at this stuff, but actually in my role, I actually need your help to help sell the story, to actually show to the general New Zealand public that this is what we can do with research and development. This is how we're going to make a difference, because we all say we want better healthcare, we want better medications, we want to cure this terrible disease, but it's actually only through research and actually doing something that is actually going to lead to those things actually becoming our reality. Now, things are tight, but hopefully it won't be the situation forever, and I'm actually quite hopeful that we are going to see a recovery. We do need to make sure that we reorganise our scientific system so we can get the best bang for a buck. And of course, talked about the 4 public research organisations. Of course, we have the bioeconomy, which is merging ag research, Scion, and land care. So those are putting all like-minded kind of groups together. And I appreciate there's the notion of silos that we want to break down, and I actually think it's a huge cliche and kind of always cringe when we say that. But we do need to make sure that we can have free exchange of information. Of course, we have the Earth Sciences one, which is NIWA and GNS Science. We have the Health and Forensic Science, which is really based off ESR, and then of course there's the new one, which is going to be the Advanced Technology, which is focused on things like artificial intelligence, synthetic biology, and quantum computing. But one thing I do want just to kind of mention, and this is not a New Zealand specific problem, but we have a problem with efficiencies in our scientific funding, and this is kind of something that's been bugged me for a while. We've become very risk averse, and I think probably the open secret is that when we apply for funding, we're actually applying for funding that's actually doomed to succeed. We know what the outcomes pretty much are before we even submit the grant. And look, I'm not throwing stones at this, and this happens. You just need to look at grants from all around the world. We've got into this risk mindset, and if you think about it, if you look at NASA back in the day when they got to the moon, they took actually big kind of long shots to make sure it happened. But over the years, we've kind of got tied down with bureaucracy and red tape. And so then suddenly things like Rocket Lab, SpaceX can kind of come and take that initiative. Whereas really NASA probably had all the brains there to kind of do it. Now, I'm not really wanting to throw stones at NASA. I can see the headlines now, New Zealand MP bags NASA. But the thing is, we need to kind of actually look at the way we're doing and what we can do. Because we take our best scientists and lock them up for 2/3 of the year, making them write grants and then progress reports and then making sure that they do all the compliance. So we need to make sure that we actually are articulating this problem so people actually know what we're doing. And of course, if we can get rid of some of these regulations, that would be great. Of course, one thing we are doing is working on the gene technology bill, trying to make sure that we have a modernised framework so we can actually do genetic research here in New Zealand. And I think I entered the field just after 1996. Well, actually, it was a little bit after that. And you saw the chilling effect that had on our research sector and some of the agriculture and some of the genetic space. So we really need to kind of modernise some of our regulations around that, and that's currently going through the Health Select Committee at the moment. But what I would implore people to do is, you are the brains of New Zealand. You're the ones that understand gene technology. We really need some of our scientists to really take part in the Select Committee process, to actually make submissions, to actually explain what it means, explain the benefits from it, and also explain some of the risks. We need to kind of have that informed opinion. So I do also not only ask you to help sell the story, but also engage in some of these processes, because there's actually not too many of us scientists in Parliament. So this is not a recruitment drive, but feel free to come and join me. You're more than welcome. But of course, we are trying to get more of that scientific voice, including having the Prime Minister's Science, Innovation and Technology Advisory Council, trying to get that voice into it to make sure that we can have a broader discussion about it. But the changes are more than just kind of merging the institutes, about kind of recognising and understanding the challenges that what we face in New Zealand, and we do need that kind of collaboration. But let's not forget that our research here in New Zealand doesn't happen in isolation. We are working in an international science community, and we do need to be competitive with our research here in New Zealand, that we can put it on the international stage. And of course, when you travel around to research institutes around the world, you are bound to hear a Kiwi accent there. We are good at this stuff. We need to make sure that we continue to do it. And that includes making sure, and I think in the previous session I was talking about training some of our students. We need to make sure that we have high quality students. And so we can also engage with international research programs, because of course, if we can use other people's money, that's even better. And of course, there's things like the methane stat mission, which of course is a joint project where we're looking at methane emissions, and so trying to kind of leverage off international funding opportunities, including the Horizons European Research Fund. So there's other things like the Alternative Energy Asia research project, and so some of these things that we can kind of then leverage off and hopefully get the benefits of that as well. And of course, there's been a number of other initiatives around investment in venture capital, also venture increase in funding for startups, because of course we need to kind of make that next leap, because of course it is very challenging to go from a fundamental research project all the way through to actually getting something into society, whether that be in the climate space, whether that be in the health space, whether it be in the medicine space. So we need to actually look at the whole system in place. So, of course, there is the Science System Advisory Group that has done their review, and I assume probably most of you have probably read that. There's also more work coming around the universities as well. So there is a lot of change going on. So I just really do want to emphasise the importance of research, and that I have been in your shoes. I know what it is like to go from soft money to soft money, and I've changed from having 3 reviewers to 70,000 reviewers. I don't know whether they're quite as constructive as 3, but it is important, and I just want to thank you for all the work that you do. I often say science is a great job, but a challenging career, and I think kind of if we can all help each other, if you can help sell the story, if you can help engage in parliamentary processes, I think the country would be a better place for it.